Hello, boys and girls. Oh my goodness. I miss you all so much. I miss our morning assembly time, probably more than I miss anything else. I miss seeing all of your wonderful faces and all my little pre-Kers and kindergartners on the front rows. And I miss seeing all of your happy faces every day. This has been such a time in the desert for us, and it still feels like we're kind of in Lent. But I figured since it's Easter and it's not Lent, we can just keep on living as close to as we were before and celebrate the things we can do. So since you can't come to morning assembly and see us, we thought we'd bring morning assembly to you, or at least I'm going to. So I have something I really want to talk to you about that I'm really excited about that I think can really help us through these dark times. And of course, a couple of them are just absolute favorite saints. And they're saints you've probably heard me talk about before. The one that I'm going to talk about first is definitely one I know you've heard me talk about before. But it bears repeating because his situation is so applicable to what I'm sure you're suffering right now in your homes 24/7. And so this saint is Saint Isidore of Seville. He lived in the 600s and he was from Spain, Seville, Spain. And for those of you who remember, he was from a family of saints. He was the youngest of four kids. All four kids became saints. Try to wrap your mind around that. It's a tall order. But he didn't have an easy life. So Isidore was actually homeschooled by his older brother, who recognized that Isidore had this amazing gift, and it was his mind. And his brother was very hard on him and expected really big things. And he would tell him all the time, you're made for greatness, and you have to make your mind so strong and so knowledgeable that you can do great things for the church with it. And you know, the thing is, Isidore just didn't think so. He didn't love it. He didn't like his brother at all. He did not love studying. He cried a lot. There were tantrums involved. And finally, one day, he ran away from home. He ran away. He hated his brother and said, I'm leaving. I'm not coming back. And he ran away and cried really hard. And as he cried, he prayed and he thought, and he was looking at this water slowly dripping off of a rock from a brook that he was sitting near. And he's watching water flow down the rocks and land on another rock. And he recognized that the water, as it dripped, it wasn't doing anything, or at least it didn't look like it was doing anything, because it's water and it's landing on a rock, which is obviously way stronger than the water. But he noticed that as the years had gone by, that water had left a really indelible mark in the rock. Drip by drip, little by little, those little drops of water had made a huge difference. And he recognized that this is probably a little sign from God for him, that if he perseveres, drip by drip, page by page of his books, chore by chore, day by day, hour by hour, that God might do something really amazing in his mind and in his heart, and that maybe he could change the world. And so he went back home. He got, of course, scolded by his brother. Leander was not a very patient person, although he did become a saint, so he learned patience. And then, over the years, Isidore became extremely holy. Now, they were all holy. His oldest brother, Leander, who had been the bad homeschooler, he was a bishop, the Bishop of Seville. He was one of the first bishops of Seville. And Isidore took his place. So he finished the work that his older brother began. So that was a beautiful kind of finish to their maybe rough start in their relationship. Their sister, Florentina, she became the abbess of her own convent. So she had great work that she did. They were all strong leaders. And his other brother, what was his name? Fulgentius. He became a bishop too in another part of Spain. So they were all great leaders, really strong leaders. The things that Isidore did with his great mind were really beyond many in the church. He is a doctor of the church. He surpassed his brothers in his wisdom and in his intellect. And he wrote an encyclopedia that was used for 900 years. An encyclopedia. He wrote dictionaries. He wrote many, many books. He was so committed to knowledge, and he understood that knowledge could lead to wisdom, which could lead to a profound understanding of God. So he created seminaries that had every single subject in the seminaries. They didn't just study philosophy and religion. They studied every subject. He wrote biology books, history books, grammar texts, math books. He wrote everything. And he made sure that there was a seminary in every single diocese throughout Spain. He was the founder of those seminaries, which is amazing. And he made sure that the priests, they were being really well educated. On top of all that, the thing that he was actually known for was his heart, his love and his faithfulness and devotion, especially to the poor, and never ever giving up on people. So he died at 80 years old, surrounded by the poor he had served for many years. And his last act was to give all of his possessions away to the poor, which is a beautiful thing. So I'm going to challenge every one of you. If you think that your homeschool mom or dad is mean, is getting annoyed with you, or is teaching you stuff that you can't remember, or that you're not skilled enough to learn these things, remember those little drops of water hitting the rock, and that over time, we become changed by every single effort that we make. We become changed. And that's how God works inside our hearts and prepares us for whatever mission he's calling us to. So don't despair. On the days when you're at your wit's end, remember St. Isidore of Seville and the inspiration that he took from knowing that those little moments would change the world. And let God change the world in your heart, because that's exactly what he wants to do. Okay, so I had to move outside because it's loud in my house because all my kids are there. It's really loud. So I'm back here until they find me, and hopefully it'll be quiet except for the birds chirping in the background. But I wanted to talk with you about another great saint whose life we can learn so much from right now while we're all stranded in our homes and feeling like we're not really doing anything that's productive, or we're being held back. And her name just happens to be Saint Julie Billiart. Okay, she was from France, and she was amazing, not just because her name was good, but because of the life that she lived and how faithful she was in the midst of her suffering. So she was born actually into a pretty well-to-do family of farmers in the 1750s, and tragedy struck when she was in her teens, and she actually lost everything. Her family lost all of their money. I think there was a terrible drought, and their farm, they completely lost their farm, and she had to go to work as a teenager to help support her family. And she started teaching CCD. She started teaching it in the church. She started teaching it in schools. She started teaching it to the farm hands who were there to help them, and that became her passion. So through the suffering that she endured, she actually found kind of God's call for her, because this is what she would do for the rest of her life. So she did this for a lot of years as a poor girl, helping her family out, and then tragedy struck again when she was 30 years old, and she became very sick, and this sickness that she had left her paralyzed, completely flat on her back in bed. And now you would think, at 30 years old, paralyzed in a bed, her life is actually over, because that's what the world would tell you. Your life is over, right? Wrong. Her life was actually just beginning. So she started preaching from her bed, flat on her back. She was witness to the fact that in your suffering, you're only more powerful. She was unrelenting, and people started coming to her from all over the place, and they would be healed, and their faith would be restored, and they were so inspired by her witness from her bedside that when the French Revolution broke out in 1789, they came after her because she was responsible for converting so many people, and they were not loving that. No one ever loves that when someone in the church is powerful. So they came after her, and she actually had to be smuggled out of her little house in a hay cart. That's the story. She got smuggled out in a hay cart, covered up in burlap blankets, and they moved her to another city, and she continued to preach. And while she's preaching from her bed, she actually gets a vision. She has a vision one night while she's sleeping that our Lord is showing her that she's supposed to start an order of nuns, and that these nuns, through their suffering and through the cross, would be instrumental in growing the faith in France. So she starts an order of nuns. Remember, she's still in bed. Starts an order of nuns, and through her prayers and the power that she had from her influence, those nuns, several years later, took their first vows. And on the day those nuns took their first vows, she was healed. She was healed, and she could walk for the first time in 22 years. So now you might think that her story is ending. She's 52, she's led a hard life. She's like, hey, I can walk. My story is actually just starting. At that time, she met a wealthy French lady named François Blin de Bourdon. Don't check me on my accent. It just sounds good, right? So she and this François were very compadres. They were heart of each other's hearts. They wanted to spread the faith together, and François had all the money, and Julie had all the faith. So between the two of them, they started schools all over the country to help the poor. She started off really just helping the poor and believing that that was her mission, and then she very quickly realized, hey, the rich have lost the faith too. So everybody needs preaching. So she started schools for everybody, and those schools completely transformed the country, and all through Julie's works and her faithfulness. And I love the fact that
she never ever let her limitations stop her from preaching. And that is my message for you today. You have a lot of limitations right now. Your life hasn't gone the way you planned. It hasn't for any of us. Far from it, right? But nothing stops us from preaching except a lack of hope. So wherever you are in your home, be that light. Be that one who's faithful. Be the one who's instigating prayer. Be the one who's choosing good in the smallest of things, and you'll transform the world. Not only your own soul, but you'll transform those around you, and that's what we're called to do. Julie had a beautiful quote that she was known for, and it was, each of us has limitations, but the worst illness of any that we can suffer is the spiritual paralysis that keeps us from doing God's work. Okay? So, guard yourself against that spiritual paralysis that keeps you from doing God's work. And you do that best by being really diligent in your prayers when you don't feel like it, by being really, really faithful to your daily duties when you don't feel like it, by doing what you're asked, even when you don't feel like it, and even when no one's looking. So when mom asks, hey, did you do your math? And you're tempted to go, yeah, when you really only did the first 10 problems, remember that faithfulness in those small things is what's going to completely transform your soul and the souls of those around you, because you're the body of Christ, especially in your home. So get busy saving the world from your bed or your couch or your dinner table or wherever it is that you feel like a bunch of nothingness is happening. Take heart in every little detail and find God in those moments, and look forward to what's going to happen, because it's going to be amazing. All right, I love you all. I miss you terribly, and I can't wait until the day that we are reunited, and that is going to be an amazing day. Stay tuned for the next little session of morning assembly at your dining room table. God bless you guys. I'm praying for you every single day.